Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hope you're doing well and keeping safe on this Saturday. In today's news video, Thomas Tuchel comments about Harry Kane, how vitally important it is Chelsea beat Aston Villa tomorrow in regards to our transfer business, and Kai Havertz gives an interview about his first season at Stamford Bridge. But before we get into any of that good stuff today, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also, do me a favor by hitting that like button because it helps new people find the channel. Big week as it always is for Chelsea, the final week of this season. Of course, got my preview for Aston Villa, the final Premier League game that will decide Chelsea's top four fate this year later today. So my preview, looking at the lineup, looking at team news, all that good stuff, and then of course my review for Aston Villa tomorrow. Hopefully it will be a positive one. And then beyond that, the week leading up to Chelsea's biggest game since 2012, arguably. I mean, you could argue that there have been other big games, of course, you know, finals, European finals too in the Europa League. But the Champions League final against Man City is so huge for this club. So I didn't just want to do the usual sort of like team selector on the Friday. Going to have a week basically of build up, or at least 3 or 4 days basically of build up. Going to be interviewing people, bringing them onto the channel. We'll discuss general Chelsea topics, but obviously focusing on that Champions League final in the lead up to Saturday night's huge game for Thomas Tuchel's side. So make sure you stay tuned for that on the channel. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the uploads and all that good stuff. But let's get to the news. Thomas Tuchel confirms Chelsea interest in signing Harry Kane. This is from Matt Law, several other reports sort of talking about this yesterday. This is from Thomas Tuchel's press conference speaking about Harry Kane. This is what he had to say about the Tottenham striker, and this seems to be the big transfer saga, whether Harry Kane will stay or leave Spurs. This is going to be the one that's going to go on for weeks and weeks, and of course Chelsea have been linked with the Tottenham striker this week since apparently Harry Kane has told Spurs he wants to leave, his intention to move on in the transfer window. Tuchel said, "If you find any coach around the world who would not like to have Harry Kane in his team, call me again. I would like to speak with the guy and hear about his ideas of scoring and attacking. Everybody loves Harry Kane, but let's be very, very clear. He is a player for Tottenham. He has a long-term contract, and we will not get involved in any press conference with any disrespectful comments about that." So I sometimes think if a Chelsea head coach is speaking about a target openly in a press conference, like naming them and going into that detail, even though Tuchel likes to really explain himself in press conferences and interviews, which is a great part of listening to Tuchel speak about football, I sometimes think that rules out the possibility of us signing. I think it's more likely, if you think about Frank Lampard last summer, the people he'd be more coy about and basically not saying anything about would be the players we'd actually sign. I sometimes think actually him being as open, Tuchel speaking about a target, makes it less likely it's going to happen. And we've seen some ridiculous pieces in recent days, some news linking Chelsea to Harry Kane. James Ollie, who is a respectable source from ESPN, but claiming that Chelsea would do some sort of swap deal where we'd let Tammy Abraham, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Kepa Arrizabalaga go in exchange for Harry Kane plus money on top of that. I mean, it sounds something, I don't even think you can do it on FIFA career mode, offer that amount of players, but you know, it sounds FIFA-like, to be honest, fantasy stuff. And just, you know, the desperation to sign Harry Kane when, although Harry Kane is a world-class forward, the best in the Premier League currently, we could sign Romelu Lukaku and not lose any of our key players. You know, I think that's a point there. And I just, Daniel Levy, you know, the lack of business between these two clubs, the political situation there, just the obvious rivalry between the two clubs, I just think it's very unlikely. And I think it's more likely he goes to somewhere like Man City, which could, you know, leave more options for Chelsea. Actually, if you think about it, you know, if Man City are not going for Erling Haaland, then Haaland could be a possibility, Lukaku could be a possibility. So it could open a door in some sense there for Chelsea, but I just can't see it happening, even though we'd all love it, right? We'd all love the bragging rights of Harry Kane leaving Spurs, joining Chelsea, winning the Premier League with us, you know, banging in a load of goals. You know, of course it'd be wonderful, and he is such an exceptional forward in terms of his all-round game. He is just flawless, I think, in terms of the injury issues is the only concern, I think, to his game, or spending that much. It has been pointed out that, you know, with maybe Haaland, Mbappe, other players on the market soon, you know, if a club was to spend that amount it would take to get him out, you're basically ruling yourself out of those potential big deals for younger players further down the line. So I understand that logic, and I just don't think it's realistic for Chelsea. I think something more realistic to speak about is how vital tomorrow is for Chelsea for next season, and also the summer spending we want to do to improve the current squad. The Athletic reporting that making the Champions League is vital for Chelsea. Missing it could leave a 75 million hole in the budget for this summer's transfers. Chelsea's priorities are a new striker and centre-back, and it delves into why it's so key for Chelsea to qualify for the Champions League. This is a great account on Twitter that I definitely suggest go and follow financial expert in terms of clubs, really breaking down the numbers financially for clubs. Swiss Ramble, I'm sure you guys know the account. If you haven't, please go and check it out. But he's done some great breakdowns on Chelsea's financial situation, and they reference it in this article in terms of just how vital it is, compared to, say, a massive club like Man United. They can afford to be out the Champions League for one season. Chelsea can't really do that. And also, you think about last summer, what sort of helped, along with the money from getting into the Champions League and being in the Champions League the previous season, was the selling of players like Alvaro Morata and Eden Hazard. That really helped bolster the summer spending. So Chelsea, although we are, to have massive investment from Roman Abramovich, the club over recent years has looked to be self-sustainable. It's looked to sell players very wisely, get money in, and then reinvest that money on the current first team squad. So it's the same thing this year, and I think that very much ties into selling players. Chelsea need to sell players this summer in what once again is going to be a very challenging market because of the pandemic. But Fabrizio Romano, slightly positive news, claiming here a couple of days ago, Chelsea are already working to sell players. Victor Moses will join Spartak Moscow on a permanent deal, agreement reached. Timothy Bakayoko and Emerson Palmieri will also leave the club this summer. AC Milan will decide next week about Fikayo Tomori. Of course, we've spoken at length about Tomori on this channel, whether it's a big mistake or not letting him go, but that's more money where Chelsea could be getting to sell some of their unwanted players. There still is quite a few, I think, that probably won't be leaving and probably will have to go on another loan. I think about Ross Barkley. I think about Ruben Loftus-Cheek. I'm just talking about players that are unwanted. Of course, you could look at the likes of Mark Guehi and Conor Gallagher, but they're young players that could break into our first team. There are others too, Davide Zappacosta. I mean, it just goes on and on. Danny Drinkwater, Baba Rahman, I think, is still on our books. So many I keep on missing in terms of players that you think the club would like to sell. Michy Batshuayi, there's another one, but unfortunately just looks like it'd be very unlikely we will be able to sell permanently, and that's going to maybe restrict some of the spending we can do, and the current big squad we have. I think we do need a big squad, as we've seen this season, but probably we don't need three first team left backs, three senior left backs in the first team squad. That's just ridiculous. That's not great squad planning. So we need to get rid of some of those players, and it looks like Emerson will be the left back to depart this summer. I also wanted to pick out this report from Dan McCarthy, who I'm going to have on the channel in my Champions League build-up, speaking about Romelu Lukaku. I definitely just go and read this article that he gave. Chelsea insider Dan McCarthy with the latest news on Chelsea's interest in Romelu Lukaku. Speaks about how, basically it looks like Lukaku could become Chelsea's priority transfer signing this summer in terms of that striker position. So go and check out the piece, and I'll be speaking more to Dan about Lukaku and other transfers in our collab early next week. So make sure you stay tuned for that, but link to his piece in the description box below. But let's take a look at Kai Havertz. He did this interview with Sky Sports ahead of the final Premier League game, speaking about his first season at Chelsea and how he's found it. Kai Havertz exclusive. Chelsea forward reflects on his own form, playing as a false nine and must-win matches. Just to pick out some of the quotes, and then we'll delve into Kai's first season at Chelsea. He said, "To be honest, it's been very tough. It's a big change. It's very hard because you play every 3 days, and the intensity here is much more than in Germany, to be honest. Of course, it's a big change for us, but for me, it always felt good to have Timo next to me because we can talk to each other. We were both in very difficult situations. He was also unlucky this season, but I think right now for 2 or 3 months we both played very well, and I hope we can continue like that. And since the last 2 or 3 months, I feel very confident. I play well, I score goals, I assist some goals, and that is what I want to do." So, positive words there from Kai Havertz. It's interesting because you go far back to last summer when Kai became the massive transfer for us last summer. He was the biggest transfer in terms of, I think, spend, wasn't he? And it went on for so long. It was the saga that just dragged on and on for weeks. Havertz, would he sign for Chelsea? Eventually he did, and it was such a big deal for Chelsea to get that transfer over the line. It did feel like a massive bonus to sign Kai Havertz, because it was one of those areas like midfield where you're like, do Chelsea really need to invest here? But then you saw the quality of the player. And of course, there's going to be that massive hype, inside the club, in terms of supporters, and the hope that he would turn into a massive player for us and can still turn into a massive player for us. But also externally, there was a lot of hope that, and a lot of expectation that he was going to come in and just hit the ground running. It's been difficult for him. I think the thing that I've constantly mentioned about signings this season, and they've all said similar, Hakim Ziyech on his struggles this year. I think maybe not Thiago Silva, but somebody, especially the younger players. I think Timo's mentioned it too, and of course Kai now's mentioned it. The circumstances around London and the circumstances in the UK, and of course the current world with the pandemic. The way I've seen some pundits on TV talk about this. The way new players would integrate into the squad. Going for team meals, for instance. Bonding, getting used to the surroundings. unfortunately, you know, for majority of the year, Kai has been in majority of the season, we've been in lockdown in the UK. You know, only now we're starting to get back to some semblance of normality. There's been no supporters inside the ground, so he's been unable to feel connected there, you know, grow a connection with the supporters. I think you saw the positive impact Timo Werner got from having backing from supporters in the ground the other night against Leicester, and hopefully that will happen for Kai. Statistically, I think it's interesting to see Kai once again flourishing at the back end of the season, and in his Bayer Leverkusen career that was exactly the same. He'd get stronger in the remaining weeks of the season, and I also just think, you know, look at the youth of this player. You know, I've made the comparison to when we signed Edin. This guy can be a massive player for Chelsea, and what we don't want to happen with Kai Havertz is him to become another Kevin De Bruyne, for instance. But I don't think that's going to happen, because we see what Tuchel is doing with him now in the system, and I think he's had some really, really good performances. I think the Crystal Palace performance, I think the Everton performance, the Real Madrid second leg performance was amazing. It really was, and you started to see it's no type performances where slowly you start to see this is why we all got so hyped last summer for this player. I think because he's such a unique talent, I think his ability to play in a number of positions as potentially that false nine, but the way he drifts so elegantly in and out of space, he's such an intelligent player, and as well he can be a really cool finisher too. So that's something this team needs as well. And at the age he is as well, with the young players alongside Mason Mount, a similar age, you think those two, the relationship of chemistry they are already forming for Chelsea now. If they can grow up together at Chelsea, that could be an incredible partnership with the other young players we've got in attack. So Kai, I think, has had a really, I wouldn't say an amazing end to the season, but has had a strong end to the season, has some really good performances, and I think that it encourages me pre-season. He didn't get a pre-season with Chelsea last year either. Barely any of the new signings did. None of the squad did really, after the congested nature of last season as well, Project Restart. So I think Kai with a pre-season, with supporters back, a feeling of normality, maybe feeling more comfortable at Chelsea with Thomas Tuchel, a German-speaking head coach, with of course Rudiger and Timo Werner, and just feeling more settled at Chelsea, I think you will see a much better and more consistent Kai next season. And maybe, I think for some of these players, if Chelsea were to sign a big striker who maybe takes the pressure off a little bit more of these players to not be the big stars every week, you know, if you've got Lukaku up there as the number 9, being that consistent goal scorer, a reliable goal scorer, I think it actually lessens the pressure on those guys to maybe play their game a little bit more freely, and it isn't reliant on them as the big money signings to make it happen every week. So those are my thoughts on Kai. Let me know your opinions on his first season at Stamford Bridge. What do you think about him this season, but also going forward into next season? Let me know in the comments below. But that is it for this edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea. Have a great day, and I'll see you again.